I'm most useful in, really those fintech conversations where we're looking at the margins and trying to build trust very quickly. I get it. I live, breathe, and eat and sleep that. When it's somebody else, and I think it's also part of knowing your team and knowing uniquely what's so wonderful. Like I had a team member who, is the queen dog mom. And we had a long discussion with, a bunch of pet-focused clients and event sponsorships. I'm like, we need to send her now. Like she is our chief pet officer. Yes, she's probably like less experienced here, there, or wherever, but she has the passion, the heart to actually connect. And someone on my team who, has worked with international customers for the past 7 years and understands not just the US market, but globally will go work with the multinationals. So I think having that deep connection, and as you can tell, like having some sort of emotional connection makes it more authentic, more real.
Welcome to How I Made It in Marketing from Marketing Sherpa. We scour pitches from hundreds of creative leaders and uncover specific examples. Not just trending ideas or buzzword-laden schmaltz. Real-world examples to help you transform yourself as a marketer. Now, here's your host, the Senior Director of Content and Marketing at Marketing Sherpa, Daniel Burstein, to tell you about today's guest.
I know the pinch when budgets tighten, customers shift, and the deadlines close in. Yet marketers, we've got a superpower. Like Superman's X-ray vision, we see through constraints to the core idea. That is the essence of our craft, not waiting for perfect conditions, but delivering breakthrough concepts right here, right now. So I love this lesson in a recent podcast guest application. Every challenge is a creative opportunity. Here to share the story behind that lesson, along with many more lesson-filled stories, is Dana Bodine, US VP of Marketing at Trustpilot. Thanks for joining me, Dana.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
All right, let's take a look at Dana's background so you know who I'm talking to. A slew of interesting brands she worked for, starting with being the coordinator of licensing and brand management at DC Comics, hence my Superman intro. Associate manager of digital sales development at the New York Times, director of digital marketing for NBC News. She worked in strategic marketing on iAd at Apple, was vice president of corporate marketing and brand development at Time, vice president of global B2B marketing strategic growth at MasterCard, vice president of marketing and PR at Pagaya, and for the past 3 years at Trustpilot. Trustpilot is a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange. In 2024, it reported $211 million in revenue, and Bodine looks after the entire U.S. market, which is the U.S. portion of an international audience of 64 million monthly active users and 300 million reviews on the site. So, Dana, give us a sense. What is your day like as US VP of Marketing?
Oh, thanks, Daniel. So I wake up and since most of my colleagues are overseas, half the day is over. So I'm waking up, probably being woken up by my 6-year-old. And I hate to admit it, but I do check Slack when I'm at least partially in bed. So for me, it's like clearing the deck of everything that's coming in from London and Copenhagen, understanding, what I'm walking into and it helps me kind of break up my day. Of the mornings are my global strategy, understanding where the business is, where my big executives are thinking and going and moving. And my afternoons are really US focused. So get my ton of my calls in, and then usually as soon as we hit noon, I get into my US zone and really get to focus on the US region.
That's great. Do you have all those clocks in your office, like we see like a train station with here's the time in London and everything?
I have it on my Apple, launch pad. So, and I definitely have it on all of my calendars. And at this point, because it's become second nature, like I understand, like I have a sense of, that like the sun has set in London, I can relax and go have lunch. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It actually kickstarts my day. And I usually walk in and we actually have really interesting communication. There's always our senior leaders are, in the morning kind of briefing the leadership team on stuff. So I'm always keeping up of, what are our press mentions? What are the things that are on the minds of our leadership team and our board and our investors? And then digging into of what needs to get done, what leads are coming in, what's our health metrics look like for the US. So it in a very simple way, it really allows me to start big and then get narrow and narrow by the end of the day.
Well, that's where you are now, but let's take a look back at your entire career, this journey, see what lessons we can wring from it. The first lesson you mentioned is every challenge is a creative opportunity. How did you learn this lesson?
Well, I think this is, I mean, this is essentially, why we bully people into writing great briefs. If there's no constraints, if the playing field is endless, you can kick a ball in a million different directions, but the constraints make you focused, make you really understand what you're playing for and how you're going to win. And there's a million and one examples. And I think this is where marketers have a reputation for a lot of things, but this is the good part where we get to surprise and delight. So when I was at MasterCard, we did a campaign called 1 Billion and Beyond, which was all about including folks in the digital economy. We were filming at the height of COVID. Literally, I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We were filming 15 blocks away in Harlem, and I could not go on the shoot. And it was really interesting because I was watching the live feed from my apartment, like just in my bedroom over there with my whole family here. And at first, when we tackled that shoot, we're like, how do we make this normal? How do we make this well produced? You always want to have a slick, beautiful story. But then you take a step back and say, that's not the reality we're living in right now. We're showing masks. We're showing the social distancing. We're not going to have a gaggle of executives peering over the shoulders of the local directors and the production crew. And that program we shot in many different locations around the world and always hired local talent to produce it. That was very important to us. So I think not the warts and all, but it was the reality and all of the slick, perfectly constructed story needed to reflect the here and the now and what life was like for folks that they were getting their hair done in Harlem. It was at a hair salon there. So for me, it was just it's an authenticity check of having those restraints to know that real life isn't perfect. Real life involves, folks that have to change the way they think and do and feel. And it took a while on COVID for us to actually see the product of our new reality reflected back on us in commercials or ads. And it felt like a really authentic moment to really show what a functioning business looks like in the era of COVID.
Yeah. So every challenge is a creative opportunity. That sounds great. And I totally agree with you there. But as a leader, is there anything you've done in your career to prep your team for that or to help your team navigate that? Because, for example, when I interviewed Renee Miller, the founder and ECD of the Miller Group, one of her lessons was the more you value yourself, the more likely you are to take calculated risks. And that is easy where we are in our career now, right? It's farther along, but we've got a lot of early stage career people listening. And when they first come across something like either COVID or a challenging creative brief or a budget cut or a partner that won't let you use their logo or a million different things, right? It can sometimes feel, I know when I was younger, felt like the end of the world. You had to fight it and you had to do that thing. So now that you're farther along, as we mentioned, you have all this brand experience. Is there anything you do with your team to help prep them or to help them overcome those challenges and have the right creative?
I think for part of it is always, and I tell this to my team all the time, have 10 to 20% of your day ready for the unexpected.
Yeah.
And then we time is finite. It's nice to think I would have 20% of my time, or at least 20% of your time that's movable or shiftable. And then it takes that time pressure off of like, look, I have this request coming down from my CEO or from one of my customers. I'm ready for this because I can shift this, or I had this block of time where it's all about I can expect the unexpected. So that immediately just preps the team to have the mindset of 20% of our day, of our week, of our month should be that unexpected time. And sometimes it flexes more and sometimes it flexes less. So it's giving people the permission to carve out that time and space for the challenges or for the unplanned. And then I also are really focused on if that 20% isn't being used, go take a walk, go sign off, go cook, go hang out with your family and friends, because there will be times when we're going to ask for extra 20% of time outside of work. And equally as much as you're asking people to flex and to go above and beyond at the times when that's not needed, to be able to dial back and get that time back. So I think bringing in that feeling of flexibility, understanding, and reasonableness is really important, that you understand your people as true humans, and they'll expand when they need to, and then they'll contract when they don't need to.
That is so true because we can't always have our foot on the gas, right? I've worked at an agency and, you get a brief sometimes it's hot, right? So then the new thing came along, it was hot, and hot, 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 hot. And hot. And it just became ridiculous. Like everything can't be hot all the time. I like that yin and yang attitude you've got there, Dana. So that's kind of your relationship with your team somewhat. But let's talk about now, you mentioned building a relationship with commercial partners this case. So how have
Yes.
you done that? How did you learn that?
So I think part of it is I have something in my DNA or in my soul or how, whatever way you want to talk about it, that likes to win. And I think I have a few flavors of sales in my bones. So I that always gets me excited. I want to win. I want to close a deal. I want to drive revenue. So I already have that driving force within me. I want to create beautiful stories and bring things to life, but I want to drive revenue. So I think I have that innate where I can connect with commercial folks in that way. And then two is really making sure that you have a full seat at the table, and that's not easy, and it's not something that has been a given. Fortunately, with my commercial partner in the U.S. now, we work very closely together. But you really have to, especially, I think, in the past, now with performance marketing, there's been a real clear measurable outcome of the work that we've been doing. But in the earlier days where the funnel was a little bit cloudier, you really had to earn that space at the table. And I had a really great mentor, Greg Boozin at MasterCard, who said, don't look at sales materials or collateral as the monkey on your back. It's your ticket to entry. And I always thought that was just so effing brilliant because, yes, creating sales, there's always the things that everyone has to do as a marketer that is, checking the box. But that level of engagement with the sales team of providing them either with education or providing something that will eventually get to a customer that is incredibly important, that's your ticket to entry. And that's one way to get a seat at the table. And then all of a sudden, you're a key player in making sure that this commercial team fully understands the product and the audience, and that everything that a customer is seeing, how it's relayed through a commercial partner, is exactly the story that you want to tell.
So as mentioned, you've had many impressive brand roles in your career. Can you give us a sense, what do you do in that first week or month of the role to build a relationship? Because I've heard kind of a similar lesson from Jean Hopkins, the chief revenue officer at OneScreen.ai. She said, build strong CFO relationships. Like that was a real focus of hers. And she just told the story of how when she would come in that first week or month in a role, that was her focus. And at one place, for example, they had 40 events that they were running. And so because she had that strong relationship with the CFO, she was able to sit down and explain why the budget for travel and entertainment for those events, which was coming all out of the marketing department, should maybe come out of each individual department and really helped her budget.
Yeah.
But so for you, Dana, take us into that first week or month in a role. What do you do to build those strong relationships with commercial partners?
It's really, and that's really good advice, the CFO part. So I'm going to keep that too.
Yeah.
Is really it's conversations, especially too, like when you're working with commercial folks, they will talk. It's just opening up of having coffee, have it with every level of the organization, ask them to take you through really the basic stuff of what keeps you up at night. What's the story you have a hard time telling? When you're asking for XYZ, what's getting in the way? What are you wasting your time in? I think, especially with a new marketing person coming in or marketing, when I came into Trustpilot, it was a very different type of world for our US region. And, with change, someone once told me that people don't fear change, they fear loss. So I tried to really understand, what were they afraid of losing? What type of support did they need for marketing? And what did they not have that I could provide something that they never thought they needed before? So really asking lots of questions and really being tactical in the sense of what will make en masse this sales floor. It's easier for them to do their job. It's more seamless to have a conversation with a customer, and how I can have those quick, even dumb wins where I'm just making their life a little bit easier. And, I'm selling them on me and my team and our eventual strategy. So, I have to pay off the promise. But again, it's really just like extracting a brief from their brains and then replaying it back to them and having a plan.
So what's a dumb win? I like that term. I have never heard that term.
Dumb win. I always do dumb wins. Like sometimes, in the past, we've had things of we don't know what marketing does. I'm like, okay, every Friday, we're going to have a summary of all the key tools, things you should read coming out of marketing. And it was really just a summary of some of the work that we've done. And it was all from the focus of what the sales need. So it wasn't about hey, marketing win. It's here are 5 new case studies. Here's where we get the latest stats on our audience and why this matters. Like a kind of like an Axios smart brevity-esque newsletter. And it was just, a well-curated email inbox that was spread to the entire sales floor. And that's a dumb win. And it's just about how do you really do some very simple things to solve some simple problems. And I've made a career on dumb wins.
I like that. It's probably more of a smart win in fairness, but I like that. Another place where those relationships can really matter is when things get intense. As you said, sometimes go for a walk during that 20% because there's other times it's going to be 120% or more. So you said you learned to stay calm under fire and on tight deadlines. How did you learn this and how did relationships help here?
I think I think the biggest thing, especially being a marketer, really at the I started in marketing back in the wild west of early digital marketing, right? We were selling homepage takeovers and impressions. I was media planning, dinosaur. So you're always a marketer at the intersection of technology, of commercial, of engineering. So there's a lot of things that you have to operationalize that you don't actually fully understand. And that's where the relationship piece came in, where I can say, look, I'm a marketer. Please explain this to me like I'm five. Got it. Now I need to regurgitate that and said, I'm going to explain this to a customer like they're five. So I think honestly, the interpersonal relationships down to the person that's helping me get my laptop set up, to the person that's cleaning the bathroom, that's setting up lunch, every single touch point of at least the office environment. When I was doing a SPAC announcement for a startup I was working at, I was literally on the phone with our IT manager, you know, halfway across the world, and was given a coffee by someone in facilities that helped me out in the middle of the night. And that's the village you have to create, and you also have to pay it back. You have to be there when someone is in their crisis moment or in their moment where they're about to go live with a website ahead of the market's opening. So I think Adam Grant, give and take, like that whole mantra of how much you can give to others, it all just comes back tenfold. And that's what I try to see, especially when I'm really frustrated at work or feeling like I'm useless or something's really, not connecting for me. I take a step back, and this is something I've had to teach myself. It's like, what can I do to help other people? Are there something I can make someone's life easier, do a little project, and then hopefully get that gets paid forward in the future?
And was there any of those kind of more commercial partner level people that really helped with the SPAC? Because I'm less familiar with SPACs, but definitely when you're going public, I mean, there is a set of regulations and legal and financial. I mean, there's so much involved that is outside of marketing that you got to do right because,
Yeah,
I mean, it becomes a
by
legal or
law.
liability issue. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I wonder when you're going through that SPAC, it's intense. You're trying to get a website live, all that is going on. Any of those commercial partner level relationships helping you navigate that?
So I would say not so much commercial. Commercial, I'm like, hold your horses. Don't sell or talk about anything as we're making this very sensitive announcement. So
Okay.
I actually push them to the back burner. My war room at that time was my legal team, my investor relations team. Like my closest companion was our head of legal that was doing all of our SEC filings. And that's someone that I had never worked before at a different organization. And that was my most important relationship. And really understanding, again, it's just like anything else. What's the problem statement? What are we trying to solve for? What are we trying to protect ourselves from? And then how do we say that in a way five different times and then look at the risk associated with each? It was actually a really interesting exercise because from a marketer's perspective, you want to go big and say the biggest, broadest way that your product is doing something amazing. But in a really sensitive situation like that, there's so much risk involved. And that's where the boundaries come in and making you more creative. You have to be very specific of what you can and can't say, and then be creative in where you can play.
Well, and how is it reining in the whole sales folks too? Because there's no time your company's talked about more than when you're going public, a SPAC, whatever. I mean, you're in the news constantly. They want to get out there, I'm sure, and talk to clients. So how did that work?
So, I mean, first of all, it's a lot of that part is very much top down. Like, we scare the living daylights out of everybody of like, hey, are all of your correspondence is discoverable? This is a time. I think that's where it's so important. And this is where working with PR and your agency partners is so important. Like, you have to let your media tell that story, whether it's the release that you do for investor relations, it's the release you do to finance media. And that's where, you're not gonna, if you have a commercial team raring to go, I give them the tools to be like, hey, we're publishing, we're going live on PR at 9 a.m. We know we have an embargoed story that's going to hit an hour later. Wait, send your customers that article. Don't set up meetings, but give them something, throw them a bone. And that's where you really have to have a pre-plan to say, we're not going to be able to rely on our normal song and dance and collateral, but we can speak through our communications channels. And that's the tools that we have to give our commercial team.
Yeah, I always love looking at people's backgrounds and the other kind of places they've worked in their career and then seeing what they can learn from it. And you have that media experience. And I wonder if anything from that media experience helped you in these tight deadline environments. Because, for example,
Yes.
when I interviewed Sydney Van Horn, who's a global head of marketing communications at McKinsey and Company, she told the story. She worked at CBS News, and she gave an announcement to the person reading the news to read as obituary, and she got the person's name slightly wrong on an obituary. And so from that, she learned it's important to take a beat. We've got all these intense deadlines in media. You've got to take a beat. And we talked about you, New York Times, Time, all these media brands you worked at. Is there anything that you took from there now when you're working on these intense marketing deadlines?
Yeah, I mean, I think I took a certain amount of it, rewrote my brain, and some of it for the positive and some of it I think for the negative. I thrive on short deadlines. Like when like we had a FTC announcement at the about a year ago about fake reviews online, and we had to have a very real time response. We were in the moment. We were watching news happen. I loved it. Like I was like, this is game time. This is their Super Bowl. Who's doing what minute by minute? Like, but I also know I can't sustain a life that way.
Yeah.
And some things require time to think and marinate, and not everything is a down to the wire thing. So I think I'm inherently drawn to short deadlines, really going big and going home. Like I have that drama from media, and I've had to learn to back into, especially when I moved to MasterCard, where I really went for the longer term of, wow, I can work on a campaign for 9 months as opposed to turning around a proposal or a concept in 9 hours in media where I had before. So it really stretches my brain, but I really thrive in the media moments, in the times when it's go time, like when we're doing a SPAC announcement. Like I was all for it. Like I couldn't do it every day, but at that moment, that was when, really the rubber hit the road. I also I think about things in headlines very much, even though I'm a marketer and I've been taking on PR in my most recent roles, but I'm, a marketer at heart. I see things through series of headlines and news, and think about things in snapshots and stories. And then I also think it's incredibly motivating. I had a boss once who at the New York Times, um, said to us, and I was at the New York Times at the tail end of the war in Iraq. And she said, look, every single news organization has left Iraq. The work that you're doing, the money that you bring in right now, my little decks that I'm doing as a 23, 24-year-old at the New York Times is helping keep the lights on in our Baghdad bureau. And that's important. And that level of, it's dramatic, it's gravity, it's storytelling, motivated me to work till 11 o'clock at night. It motivated me that there was this higher purpose of, we were helping spread the truth and actually, you know, get information out there when other media companies couldn't afford to do it anymore. So I think that the narrative around it, the bigness of the mission, helps me then articulate the importance of what we do to the teams that I work with.
What a beautiful connection that boss made to connect what you were doing. I mean, that's what we all need to be doing with our teams for everything. But that was a beautiful connection.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we just talked about some of the things that Dana made in her career and some lessons we can learn. In just a moment, we're going to talk about some of the lessons from some of the people she collaborated with. But first, I should mention that the How I Made It in Marketing podcast is underwritten by MECLabs AI, the parent company of Marketing Sherpa. You can get conversion-focused training from the lab that helped pioneer the conversion industry in our AI Guild and a community to collaborate with. Grab your free 3-month scholarship to the AI Guild at join.meclabsai.com. That's join.meclabsai.com, MECLABSAI.com, to get artificial intelligence working for you. All right. The first person you mentioned kind of briefly earlier, Greg Boosin from MasterCard. You said you learned from Greg you can get a seat at the table by creating sales materials. So you kind of hinted at that before. You want to kind of take us a little deeper down that road?
Yeah, I think again, all of our jobs are incredibly administrative. Sales and commercials and administrative. So I think, marketers always roll their eyes at doing the one sheets and the decks. And again, it's not my favorite activity, but it's your ticket to entry on that commercial roller coaster. It gives you a seat at the table where you have to, in order to create those things, you have to get closer to the customer problem, the customer need. You have to understand what you're creating and whether you're filling a knowledge gap on the commercial side or you're actually speaking directly to a customer. And it really helps break down the barriers, because I think, commercial folks are inherently competitive and protective of their customers. That lets you in. That's the key that unlocks, okay, now I have to lay my cards out in front of you. So he really positioned it as a source of power rather than kind of the subservient, support role that marketing sometimes is positioned as. And I play with that too. Sometimes I have to say, look, you got to be honest with me and tell me good, bad, and ugly what we're dealing with so I can help enable you to have great conversations. And it opens things wide up that I would not have had the opportunity to do if I was just in my marketing gilded tower. So I think it gets closer to real talk, and it gets closer to really and I think part of the always the divide with marketing in commercial is a lack of empathy. And I think as the closer you can get to helping enable commercial to do their job, you really get closer and being able to empathize with their day to day.
I will mention too, you've had some managers who did an excellent job positioning how your role fits in. If we all had all these managers through our careers, that's fantastic.
Well, you have to know how I'm motivated. So they're probably like, all right, Dana needs to get up and do a really annoying project. We have to make it, we got to bring like, Spielberg level storytelling to get her to do anything. That's probably what they had to do.
Oh, good empathy. All right, we talk about seat at the table with sales and commercial team. How do you get a seat at the table when it comes to new product development? Because when I interviewed Stuart Benton, the president and CEO of Bradford Soap, he told me that new product development lives within the marketing organization at his company because from an R&D perspective, he wants to deliver stuff that will sell, right? Of course, not every
Mhm.
company is that way. Sometimes it's totally disconnected. They're building something, we just got to sell it, although we know the customer wants something else.
Yes.
So in your career, do you have any examples of how you figured out how to kind of get a seat at the table when it comes to product development?
I think what's really, and I've been, I was at Apple, who does, zero product. They design things that they know people will like rather than asking people what they think they would like. It's really what's interesting now, I think, and being what I love about my role now is that our target audience is me. Selfishly, there's no learning curve. We're selling to marketers and CX leaders, so having that credibility with the product team. One, in my former roles, I would have been purchasing Trustpilot and a user and deeply invested in the success of my trust score for my business. So one, there's that's kind of like canned. I'm your in-house target audience person, and I think too. I think what a marketer can really offer and be and super helpful in the product organization is, again, with having a really close commercial relationship, it gives another shade of insight into what customers want that is outside the transaction. So the product folks will talk to commercial and they'll hear from commercial, hey, this is what they want. They want it for this price. They need it ASAP because our competitors are doing XYZ. I think a marketer, when you're close to the commercial function and you really talk to a lot of customers, you can give those shades of gray. Like, actually, it's not about the price; it's about the value that they're actually driving here. And the time to value is 6 months when we really need it to get it to 3. So it dimensionalizes the commercial feedback, and I think that's where you get the seat table of you having a voice that is adding context and color to the normal inputs that they're going to have already. And again, for me, product development starts in marketing because our customers are all marketers. Uh, and so that to me is a bit of a slam dunk. That's an easy answer for my role.
You've got it easy for that. Well, let's talk about then. You talk about customers. How do we get to know customers and how do we know what they want? You said you learned from Alicia Skubik at Trustpilot to truly be customer obsessed, respect the customer's time. So what does this mean and how do you do it every day?
I think, well, first of all, just talk to customers. And I think, I've had the opportunity to sit with a lot of customers now and really, and they love talking to me because I get to geek out over marketing, having conversations like this of like, oh my God, remember we were buying leaderboards 15 years ago and how crazy that we couldn't measure anything. So I think one, having an authentic experience, two, and a real conversation, and two, coming to the table with value to say, hey, cool. You guys are a customer. Thank you for your business. But did you guys know you haven't tapped into XYZ that's included? Here are some best practices. I could have our creative director walk you through how to create compelling ads that drive 10x click through response than you would have had otherwise. Like how I can give. I think the giving part is really important. Where again, I'm not getting on the phone just to like hobnob and talk shop, which is important. Everyone needs that. But also, what can I leave behind that actually this at that 30 minutes, that hour with Dana made me use this product more smartly, made me understand other use cases, made me rethink about the way I use this creative. It's like what I can give and what I can leave behind. And what Alicia, drives home, and she oversees not just the marketing function, but the customer experience function now, is like, we know this. We're in the attention economy. We know we're competing for time more than even we're competing for money, of like the value of that 30-second video, of that 2-minute time someone is reading a thought leadership piece. That is a gift. That is precious. What are you leaving with them to make that time spent worthwhile? Not just throwing stuff together and saying, this is a written piece of content. Are you really making those 5-10 minutes worthy of that audience's time, and taking that level of gravity? And again, back to the dramatics of this is someone's time that they're not spending walking their dog, they're not cooking dinner, they're not with their kids. Are what you're doing important enough for them to take a pause and spend time with your brand?
And how do you determine that it's you that talks to a customer? Like when, customer A comes up and it's like, is it going to be Dana? Is it going to be someone else? Like why in what situations are you the most valuable use of their time?
Yeah, I'm the most valuable use of time. I mean, because I come from a payments and fintech world, I've been working a lot with our fintech and payments clients. So for me, especially when we work really closely with, basically the challenger brands, the new innovative products. They're not, it's probably before they're going to be acquired by a big uh, financial service company. And that's where I was before. So for me, it's really easy. We speak the language to be like, look, I know you have this much budget and this amount of scrutiny. Let's look at like all the data you need to surface back up to your CFO and back into how to get that. So I'm most useful in, really those fintech conversations where we're looking at the margins and trying to build trust very quickly. I get it. I live, breathe, and eat and sleep that. When it's somebody else, and I think it's also part of knowing your team and knowing uniquely what's so wonderful. Like I had a team member who, is the queen dog mom. And we had a long discussion with, a bunch of pet focused clients and event sponsorships. I'm like, we need to send her now. Like she is our chief pet officer. Yes, she's probably like less experienced here, there, or wherever, but she has the passion, the heart to actually connect. And someone on my team who has worked with international customers for the past 7 years and understands not just the U.S. market but globally, will go work with the multinationals. So I think having that deep connection, and as you can tell, like having some sort of emotional connection, makes it more authentic, more real, and more exciting for because like anything else, it's not rocket science. Whatever someone needs to get up to speed on how to measure conversion rates for a fintech versus a CPG company, we can figure that out. I think finding the right human to have that connection to the client really comes through in those conversations.
Well, what you're saying, I don't want to overlook this because I think it's a brilliant use of your team and understanding deeper, not just, that person is in charge of the CRM or whatever it is, but understanding who that whole person is deeper. And then looking at your customers and understanding them deeper and doing a little matchmaking. I won't sing the song from Fiddler on the Roof. We talked about I share the name with one of the actors, but you are doing a little matchmaking there, and that's very impressive. All right, but some marketers, even CMOs, might be a little nervous getting on the phone with customers, talking to them. As we mentioned, you do have that lovely media experience. Is there any questions that you ask or anything that's really worked well to either get the conversation rolling? Or I'll give you an example. I interviewed Onesa Landis, the vice president of marketing at Octane, and one of her lessons was, to market effectively, you have to think beyond what your product does. You have to understand the role it plays in your customers' lives. And when she started that, and they're like financing for like, I don't even know what these called, like the quad hoppers and the power sports kind of motorsports type of stuff, like dealerships that sell that, they do the financing for it. So we're talking to these owners of these, motorsports franchises. She did not have that experience at all. And when she got into some of these conversations, she realized a lot of the most helpful things was just understanding their lives more, like the bigger piece, not just her product. And the calls would go like an extra half hour because they get into that very human element of things. But for you, Dana, do you have any good go-to questions or ways to get that rolling?
I think that's spot on. I think understanding, and I think getting out of the navel gazing centricity of what about my product. Everyone's always going to ask, what could our product or experience change to help you? I think finding out like, what are the big things that challenge you every day? You're waking up as the head of marketing for, maybe beardelivery.com, and you sell teddy bears across the US. Trustpilots may not be the product that you're thinking of, but, for example, it's the shipping provider. I'm not in shipping. That's not what our core product does, but we can actually glean some really interesting audience insights from shipping providers based on some ways we can tweak our product, and we can actually work with a customer to do that. So that's where it's like really challenging, asking about their whole problem statement, not just in regards to how you're quote unquote relevant, because one, I think that's self-serving. You're not actually interested in their problems.
Yeah.
And then two, I think that opens up a new opportunity to say, wait, could my product or anything near it help solve something or be a piece of the puzzle that helps solve that? And then that's also valuable when you talk to a product team to give them that color of like, look, if we had custom tagging and we were able to look at, all reviews that had to do with shipping issues with this teddy bear conglomerate, could we surface that up for a customer? Like, oh yeah, we could totally do that. So I think it's really, there's times where you want to be really focused and there's times you want to just completely open up all the guardrails. And I think when you're talking to a customer, giving them as much wide space to really express themselves. Again, it helps you empathize with what they think about day in and day out, and it gets you outside of your tunnel vision of just your product.
And you're also talking about context. And another lesson you mentioned was ideas are only powerful when they come with context. And that's what you're really doing well there is understanding the customer context. You said you learned this from Christine Wu at Time Incorporated. How did you learn this from Christine?
So Christina is great. I mean, we were almost yin and yang. And early part of my career, it was like Dana is the brainstormer. She's the one that comes up with ideas. We think of big, wacky ideas. We have campaigns. We run them. But I was based in very little data. Besides after the fact measurements, it wasn't really driven by any type of survey data or quantitative or qualitative or anything trend work. And Christine really paved the way and taught me about like, look, you have the greatest idea in the world, but what's a core truth, which is what data points are that keep your house up and keep the foundation of the big, most beautiful creative idea that you're trying to build. What are the foundations that resonate? So we did a body of work where we looked at, just trends and how people were consuming media and storytelling and created a whole thought leadership piece around some key trends in how people are experiencing culture. And for me, that also too, it wasn't a wide, we came with a few set of data points and facts that we were able to define these different trends and then built ideas on top of it. And it was really interesting to me because then it drove real importance and relevance for what we're doing and why it matters. So she brought, me close. I was always the gal that's like, I don't want to see the numbers. I don't want to see, but that's again, another ticket to ride is having the data to say, look, customers are changing the way they're buying. Media budgets might be up, but media is more expensive. So it may look like there's more to work with. There actually isn't. So here's where we got to, create some space for our customers. And she really taught me how to like lean into it and see it as just like another opportunity to gain credibility with your audience.
That's great. When I think of context too, the other thing I think about is marketing's role in protecting the value proposition and brand. And I wonder if you've ever been in any of those conversations with other departments and you had to stick up there. And I'll give you one quick example. I love this example from just my life. I wrote once a customer first marketing prioritizes customer experiences over upsells because I had this specific experience at Barnes and Noble. So I don't know if you're a Barnes and Noble shopper there, but I would go into Barnes and Noble and every time I would buy something, the cashier would be like, hey, do you have a membership? And they'd always try to sell me on the membership. And then one day I went in with my daughter and she bought some like anime thing or something like that. And instead of the cashier doing that, the cashier actually had a conversation with my daughter and they kind of geeked out and were big fans. And I kind of got thinking like, most of this stuff I could just buy online easier and cheaper, right? But I come in here into a bookstore because it's more of an experience. But somewhere in that grand scheme of that company, not to pick on them, I love Barnes and Noble, they decided that we need these upsells. We need to sell these memberships, right? And there was a meeting and there were the right people in the meeting and all that. And in that meeting, there wasn't a marketing or brand leader that said, hold on, what is our value proposition of our offering? And yes, while it's important to sell upsells, we need to protect that value proposition, which is probably experience-based if people are going to the store instead of being online. Okay, that's a long way to say. That's just my experience. In your experience, like you had all these great conversations about working with all these different departments and doing that. Have you ever had to, stand up and say, hey, these things make sense from a business perspective and margin, whatever, but there's a bigger picture. There's this brand we've been building in our 9-month campaign. There's a value proposition. And by going for this goal, like we're missing that piece. Or am I just way off on this? You can shoot me down too.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, absolutely. Even when we deal with it with our day in and day in at Trustpilot, trust is in our name.
Yeah,
it is
true.
So critical. It's what we offer the tools for businesses to build with their customers. And it gets so tactical sometimes when we're even thinking about how we're conversing with folks on LinkedIn or other social media channels. So one of our key tenets for Trustpilot is we don't delete authentic reviews. So then we kind of took a step back of like, all right, we're going to, everyone has trolls on social media. Everyone has to deal with all sorts of challenging conversations. We have to take that value and take that wherever we are. We're not going to delete weird comments in the things that are on platforms elsewhere than our own, because that's still the core truth of, we don't hide real feedback, whether it's rational or irrational. So Trustpilot has done a really great job of teaching me to the nth degree of how we take that value forward in everything that we do. Are we making sure that every single ad that we're putting out there, like, yes, shouts from the rooftops that everything is great, but we have an ultra extra trusted standard of, would this pass muster on our platform? And that's what we hold ourselves to across the board. So not deleting of comments, making sure we're really grounded and be able to cite our data, making sure that we're rooted in real experiences. And again, that it gets a bit pedantic sometimes, and it gets a bit, like, all right, how much can we talk about trust? And I'm just trying to post an article on LinkedIn. But, it's one way to drive a culture. And then once it becomes inherently part of your personality and how you view the world, then brand management is taken care of on its own, because everyone has that filter that they've built in themselves. And everyone in an organization is actually really talented and good at being able to see that wherever they go.
That's great. So we talked about many different things about what it means to be a marketer from all your stories and all these lessons. If you had to break it down, Dana, what are the key qualities of an effective marketer?
Listening. I think listening more than speaking, which we don't have a great track record of, myself included. We love to talk and we love to storytell, but I think the most important thing is listening. And, being able to hear from your commercial partners, your product partners, and most importantly, your customers, and being able to articulate that back and show value of the time that they spent to give that information to you, that you do something useful with it. So it's listening and then being able to do something really powerful to it. Being flexible, again, having a 20%, 30%, whatever it is, to expect the unexpected, because the world and technology is changing faster than we can create our marketing plans. And that's what keeps things exciting. So I think I'm a huge fan of the marketing generalists, of being a cross-functional, can run, can jump, can fly, but maybe I can only do a little bit of karate myself. Everyone's going to have their specialties, but having across the board some of the core competencies of a marketer. And I think being able to write, you have to just be able to write. And maybe I sound old school in the world of ChatGPT and Grammarly and everything else, but I think especially now, people are sussing out what's authentic and what's not, and being able to have a true, beautifully written correspondence, whether it's just an email to a customer, whether it's an ad in Times Square, you have to be able to write.
Yeah, and writing is thinking. Don't outsource your thinking.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Well, we got there. Well, so if you had to give a Trustpilot review to this interview, Dana, what would we say? How did I do? How did we do here?
I would give it a 4.8 out of 5.
We're close.
Because honestly, what we find is consumers trust a 4.8 score more than they trust a 5-star score, because 5 feels perfect. It feels like there's something not. How could an insurance company? How could a podcast? How could anything be perfect? And then, but the 4.8 shows some humility and some, maybe there was mistakes, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it's real. And I would choose a 4.8 business over a 5-star business any day of the week.
Well, I'll take a 4.8. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time today, Dana. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you for joining us for How I Made It in Marketing with Daniel Burstein. Now that you've gotten inspiration for transforming yourself as a marketer, get some ideas for your next marketing campaign from Marketing Sherpa's extensive library of free case studies at marketingsherpa.com. That's marketing, SHERPA.com.